Good evening, everybody. My name is Tracy Craig, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. This meeting is being hosted by Alameda County Department of Environmental Health and is being held to discuss and receive comments on proposed activities for the 820 West MacArthur project. We do have Spanish interpretation or translation tonight, and I'm going to let John Permani, who's with me tonight, work with the translators to explain that. John?
Thanks, Tracy. So if you're interested in hearing the presentation tonight interpreted into Spanish, there is a globe icon on your screen that you can click. If you click that, you'll be able to choose between English or Spanish audio. So if you want to listen in Spanish, you'll click the Spanish option. And then if you would like, you can choose to mute the original audio. If you're on your phone tonight, you may need to hit the symbol with 3 dots to find the interpretation feature. And now I will turn it over to the interpreter to translate that into Spanish.
Buenas noches. Para los que desean escuchar la interpretación en el idioma español, tienen que elegir el idioma español en el símbolo del globo terráqueo que está en la parte inferior de la pantalla, y también tienen la opción de silenciar el audio original. Para aquellos que estén asistiendo a esta reunión y usando su teléfono celular, van a tener que buscar la función de interpretación de idiomas en los 3 puntitos que están ejemplificados en la pantalla, y allí podrán elegir la interpretación de idiomas.
Thank you, and I have now started the interpretation feature.
Thank you. Okay, again, I'm Tracy Craig, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting for Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. A couple things to note: we do have Spanish interpretation, and this meeting is being recorded. We will upload that link to the Water Board's website, GeoTracker, and people can watch this at a later date. This is a Zoom webinar. That means that attendees don't have audio and visual feed, and we don't have any attendees right now, so I don't think we need to worry about that. This meeting is being held to provide information about and receive public comments on plans to address contamination in soil, gas, and groundwater for the 820 West MacArthur site. We are in the middle of a public comment period, which started on August 24th and runs through September 6th, 2023. The public comment period was announced through a fact sheet that was mailed out to people in the area. This meeting is solely about environmental activities and not about the housing project plan for this site, which has already been entitled by the City of Oakland. This slide shows our agenda, pretty straightforward. We'll start with introductions, followed by about a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So first, I'd like to introduce our project team. Okay, again, this is Alameda County Department of Environmental Health's meeting, and with us tonight we have Dylan Rowe, who's the Chief of Land and Water for Alameda County. Dylan, can you raise your hand?
Good evening.
And then we also have Andrew Drew York, who is the case manager for this site.
Good evening.
And then we don't have anybody representing us from the City of Oakland, but our city planner is Neil Gray. And then just for people to note, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District also has a role in this project during grading work or soil disturbing work, and can be called if people have a complaint about dust. Next slide, please. And then I'd like to introduce the development team. So Rios Capital is the one that will be developing this property, and with us tonight is Seth Lang. Seth, can you raise your hand?
Hello.
Batson and Chad Leegey. And then their consultant is a group called Terra Phase Engineering. And with that group, we have Andy Lojo and Shaquille. And Shaquille, I do not know how to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you go ahead and do that.
Everybody, Shaquille Jogia.
Jogia, okay. And then we also have 11 Engineering, Ryan Harding. And then, of course, I'm Tracy Craig Communications, and with me is John Permani doing all the wizardry to make this meeting work virtually. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the site location, I think most people know, it's at 820 West MacArthur, and that's at the corner of West MacArthur and West Street in Oakland. And then just a quick site overview. Important to note that 820 West MacArthur is going to owns the site and will be redeveloping it. That site has been entitled by the City of Oakland. They're going to be building housing here, and it's designed for what's called the missing middle. So people that provide services to folks, teachers, nurses, firefighters, police, and so on. There have been chemicals detected in the site, and Dylan will be discussing those later and what Alameda County's plans are to address those plans, address those chemicals, so the site is safe for future users and people in the area. And then I just want to note that the City of Oakland oversees demolition and redevelopment. Alameda County Department of Environmental Health oversees below ground contamination cleanup to support construction. And now I'm going to turn this over to Dylan Rowe.
Good evening. I'm Dylan Rowe. I'm the Chief of the Land and Water Protection Division. So I want to just give you an overview of what this site, what the history of the site is. It operated as a gas station and a car repair and tire shop from 1967 to 2018. And then there have been quite a few environmental investigations that have been conducted at the site over a period of 5 years from 2018 to 2023 to understand the extent of impacts to soil, gas, and groundwater from releases of hazardous materials related to those historic operations as a gas station. On-site environmental investigation findings have included the following. There is petroleum products in soil and soil gas. There are solvents in soil gas. There's lead in shallow soil. And there's minimal impacts to groundwater, very, very minor, but none that exceed any kind of, none that are of concern for a risk-based level. Off-site environmental investigations have already also been conducted at the site on some adjacent properties. And the same contaminants, the same volatiles and petroleum contaminants have been detected in soil gas on adjacent properties. The proposed remedial action that we're going to talk about in a few slides will reduce that potential contribution to those offsite impacts from the site, and post-remediation sampling will be conducted on those properties if access is provided by the adjacent property owners. Next slide. So this is a figure of the site, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a big arrow that runs, that points to from the right to the left of this page, which is the direction of groundwater flow. And that's been determined by installation of 3 monitoring wells on the site. And it's difficult to see it, but there are 3 blue dots that are monitoring wells. And then this figure also shows soil vapor or soil gas wells, which are some probes that have been installed at the site, both on-site and off-site on the adjacent parcels. And these are the points where groundwater and soil vapor data collection has occurred. Next slide. So recently, this map is not a comprehensive figure of all the borings, but it has a lot of dots on it. There are a lot more dots that have been in locations where soil samples have been collected, but these are the samples that have been collected recently to refine the understanding of the excavation extents that are going to occur at the site that we'll talk about, and to characterize the soil for disposal at a landfill. Next slide. So this is a model that takes all the soil data that has been collected at the site from soil samples and puts it into a model, and it shows in kind of 3 dimensions where the impacted petroleum-related contaminants are. The brighter orange are the higher concentrations, and the lighter colors are concentrations that are decrease as you move away from those hotspots. And we'll talk about the remedial excavation, but it will be focused on removing these impacts from soil. Next slide. Besides petroleum-related contamination, there's also something called tetrachloroethylene that has been detected in soil vapor both on and off-site. And soil vapor is air that basically collects in between the spaces in soil beneath the ground, and there's PCE, so there's a contaminant that is a contaminant of concern to us, and the suspected source of the PCE on site is from a drain area. It's a little difficult to see, but it's at the top of the site, and you can look in reports on GeoTracker in the case files if you really want to see this better. But there's a drain that also had a sanitary sewer running from it, and it does appear to be the source of the VOC of the chlorinated solvents on this site. Next slide. So there was an original cleanup plan that Environmental Health approved in September 2020 after a 30-day public comment period was held on that plan. And that plan included excavation of the upper 1 to 2 feet of soil across the site to remove shallow lead impacts in soil, excavation of soil at depths of up to 5 to 10 feet in select areas to remove petroleum products. You can kind of remember that 3D model that showed where some of that petroleum was, and then disposal of petroleum impacted soil at a licensed landfill off-site, and consolidation of lead impacted soil beneath the buildings, and backfill of excavated areas with clean fill, and then installation of a vapor intrusion barrier to help mitigate vapor intrusion risk, human health risk to occupants of the new building from vapors that may remain in the subsoil after or in the soil after excavation is completed. And then confirmation sampling. So after the excavation happens, collection of samples to confirm that the remedial excavation was conducted in accordance with its with the plan that we have approved to remove the VOC impacted soil. Next slide, please. After that 30-day public comment period in 2020, the case kind of went silent for a few years, and during that time, the developer worked with the city of Oakland to make some changes to the configuration, the design, and the building type. And so since there were and the development project was re-entitled by the city, and that prompted submittal of something called a 2023 Supplemental Remedial Action Plan, which basically modifies the corrective action plan that was sent out for public comment in 2020. And kind of the biggest pieces that are different is that the supplemental plan provides site-specific remedial goals based on the depth of contamination that will reduce exposure. So if you remember, I talked about in the previous plan, there was the plan was to consolidate lead on site. This plan now removes all lead that that poses a human health risk. It removes it and transports it to a offsite landfill. So the differences are that the entire site now will be excavated down to 7 feet, and select areas will be further excavated to a depth of 14 feet. And the goal of this will be to completely remove lead-affected soil from the site to below residential human health standards, and to remove significantly more of the TPH gas and related constituents from gasoline from the soil. And there's something on here that will also be done that's not on here. When the site is demolished, the sanitary sewer and the drain that are the suspected source of the VOC impacted, the chlorinated solvents, will also be removed. And soil in those trenches will be removed in this when they excavate this 7 feet of soil. The excavation to a depth of 7 feet of soil, then backfilling, will provide something called a bioattenuation zone. So it's a 5 foot thick layer of clean soil that is expected to remediate or reduce any petroleum-related volatile constituents in soil gas, so that by the time they travel through that clean soil, they will be at levels that are below human health risk levels for vapor intrusion. As a contingency, because the soil vapor concentrations will not be known and construction will start immediately after the excavation is completed, the developer has chosen to install a contingency vapor mitigation system, and the soil vapor concentrations will be evaluated during construction to determine whether that it will be required as a long-term engineering control. And then at the end, to close this piece up, we are in the middle of public comment. I believe we have 2 more weeks, and we will take written comments and address them. So if you have written comments, please submit them to us, and we will consider them prior to approving the supplemental remedial action plan. Next slide. So we talked about this. The proposed excavation will be to a depth of 7 feet across the site. And then there will be some additional excavation in the areas of this historic petroleum UST underground storage tanks that were the source of the release of the petroleum. During the excavation, groundwater is likely to be encountered and will be removed and containerized and disposed of offsite at licensed landfills. And then all the material that is brought back into the site to backfill the excavations will be certified as clean material to ensure that we don't bring contaminated soil back onto the site. Next slide. So the excavation is going to be conducted in phases, and I'm going to tell you that this excavation is going to create odors. If it doesn't, I will eat my words, but it is a pretty big excavation to remove petroleum impacted soil, and it's a good thing. We want to get the petroleum impacted soil out of this neighborhood, but it means that for a period of 6 to 8 weeks, there are going to be times when there are going to be odors. And so the phasing of the excavations is one way of helping to minimize that, and completing some excavations and backfilling them before exposing the next piece of soil. So the entire petroleum impacted soil areas will not be excavated at one time, and that's one method of minimizing. We'll talk about some other methods of minimizing odor as we go on. Next slide. Briefly touched on this. This is really for the occupants of the new building, although vapor mitigation systems do provide some protection of offsite migration of any volatile compounds in soil vapor coming up through the soil. And in this particular case, there will be a plastic barrier and piping that is underneath the building foundation, and the piping collects vapors from a gravel layer and vents them to the roof. There will also be some plugs, kind of clay plugs, that we put in new utility trenches, and the goal of that is to help prevent any on-site leftover contamination that is in soil vapor from migrating off-site. And then, as I said before, whether these vapor mitigation controls will be required to be monitored and reported on for the life of the project will be dependent on soil vapor data that will be collected after the excavation to determine how effective the remediation has been. I expected, and I know the developer and the consultants expect the soil vapor concentrations to be dramatically reduced by this excavation. Next slide. So during excavation, there's going to be a community air monitoring plan. This is for the community. There is a plan on GeoTracker. Is there a plan on GeoTracker, or is there going to be a plan, guys? Andy?
It's currently not on GeoTracker, but it will be.
Okay, so there will be a community air monitoring plan. And we're going to talk about what that is, but basically there are going to be some monitoring stations on every side property line on the fences, and they will be monitoring for particulate matter, for dust. They will also be monitoring for volatile organic compounds. The goal of these monitors is to to continuously monitor and determine trigger levels and evaluate trigger levels to stop work when there are exceedances of volatiles or particulate matter crossing property lines, and that is to protect the community. There will be air monitoring that will be conducted prior to the work starting, and then it will be continuous through all excavation work. The health protection levels that have been identified for this site are conservative, meaning they have a lot of factors of safety, meaning we want to make sure that the community is protected during excavation, and there are a lot of trigger points, and they will be specified in this community air monitoring plan that state what levels will shut work down. Next slide. So this figure shows the location of the air monitoring stations. There's one. There are these yellow boxes with X's in them. They're on each side of the property. The two probably most important ones are the ones to the adjacent community, to the adjacent residences. So in addition to those air monitoring stations, there will also be on-site personnel overseeing the excavation that will be maintaining and reading those monitors and looking for dust and directing work to be stopped or corrective measures to be implemented if dust is exceeding its corrective action levels. Next slide. So again, this is the excavation phasing, and Andy, I believe, why don't you talk about this? Is the green starting first?
I'm sorry, couldn't unmute myself there for a minute, but yeah, the plan is to do this in phases because we're doing direct loading. So the contractor is going to, right now the structures have been demolished down to the pavement, but the pavement's still there. That provides us a nice solid and clean, relatively clean working station. So we're going to start on the west side. That happens to be where the highest or the deepest impacts are. And we're going to excavate from west to east, that green zone first. And when that is done, well, those deeper areas are going to get backfilled right away because there's a potential for groundwater to come in. But other than that, we're going to excavate that whole green area. That's going to take a week or two. And then that area we're going to collect confirmation samples. Those dots are shown on here to make sure we've met our remedial goals. And once we've confirmed that, we're going to backfill with the clean material. And that'll take a week or two to backfill that green zone. Then we're going to move over to the blue, get that done. So now we can work on the green zone. And then the last zone will be this brownish color in the southeast corner.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Next slide, please. So, Tracy, I'm going to let you take this.
Sure. So hi, Tracy Craig again. And we recognize that this is an area with residential uses and we have neighbors very close by. So there's lots of things that we'll be doing to protect people's health as we do this work. First of all, just in terms of managing soil, our best friend will be water. So we want to keep that soil damp simply because that will tamp down some of those odors. Also, soil will be directly loaded onto trucks. And the advantage of that is that rather than having large soil stockpiles on site, you'll be putting that soil directly into the truck bed while you're keeping it moist. And if you see the picture here, they're spraying water on it. So that will eliminate dust and also storing soil on site. Then we'll limit our speed on site and use and also sweep the streets daily. So, and then we talked about odors. We expect that you'll probably smell some heavy petroleum odors during some of that work. So first and foremost, I want to say, if you smell odors, you can call me directly on my cell phone, 24/7, and my number is later on in this presentation. But I'll give it to you right now. It's 510-334-4866. I'll have a direct line to Seth, and we can quickly increase our odor suppression methods. But you will be smelling some short-term odors, and we call them nuisance odors because they really don't present a health impact, but they are bothersome. So during that work, if you smell odors, best thing you can do is close your windows. You can also call me. We're happy to give you a HEPA filter, which will help filter some of those odors out of your home so that you can use your home comfortably during the time that we're doing this excavation work. We also have some ways to control odor besides water, and that includes foam and some odor suppressants, but those come with a smell too. So there's no perfect fix. It's really, I think our best line of fixing is communication to let us know that we're doing an okay job or when we need to increase suppressants. And once again, if you smell anything during this and it's bothersome, you can call me directly and we'll take steps to minimize those odors. And then finally, we also want to prevent what runs off into the water that runs off the site and goes into the bay. So we do typical stormwater management. You can see there's a green, we call it a wattle, but it's like a stuffed snake of material, and that will be put in front of any kind of storm drains to direct water and keep it on the site. And finally, there'll be there'll be signage on the site, and that again will have my number on it, and it will be my cell phone. And you're encouraged to call me or have any of your neighbors call me if you have any questions about this or the work is making you uncomfortable in any fashion. Next slide, John. Okay, and then we recognize also that we have trucks associated with this project. So just want to be clear that trucks will be staged off-site, so they won't be idling in the area and they won't be parking on the streets. We recognize it's residential and parking is tight. The trucks are always covered and cleaned before they leave, so we'll actually cover that truck bed and then clean the undercarriage and the wheels. Again, we'll be sweeping the streets, and we regularly monitor our trucks and make sure that the drivers are licensed and know exactly what they're doing to make sure that they're safe drivers. Finally, we have a truck route, I think is our next slide. The City of Oakland makes us adhere to a truck route, and this is the truck route that we're taking. And John, I cannot see that, so maybe you can tell us what exactly that truck route is here.
Yeah, so the green arrow here shows the route from the offsite staging area to the site. And then the red line is the route that trucks will be taking either to 80 or on 24 to go to the disposal facilities.
Thanks. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then communication. So first line of communications, me, you can call my cell phone. As I said, we'll have a sign up there with site contact information, and that will include my cell phone number, also the number for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, should you choose to call them. I will probably respond a lot faster, so I would encourage you, if you want to call them, to call us both. Also, we'll be distributing a work notice prior to the work starting, and we'll mail that, and we'll also walk it around the neighborhood to make sure that people get it. And again, if you would, that will have my number on it, and if you want any kind of help or an air purifier, please let me know. And then we'll be, we have regular reports about the project, including air quality monitoring results, and those are uploaded to GeoTracker, and that GeoTracker link is on the work notice, and this also will be shown in the next slide in this presentation. Okay, so here's our schedule. Our GeoTracker slide is coming up. Here's our schedule. We're in the middle of the public comment period, where ACHD will, Alameda County Department of Environmental Health will be reviewing and considering all comments received before they make a decision to approve the changes to the cleanup plan. They'll issue an environmental cleanup notice. We will send out a work notice so that people know the work is starting. And then we expect that the environmental cleanup work will begin in September. Working hours are dictated by the City of Oakland, and they're 7 a.m. to 6 a.m., but I think most noisy work actually starts about 8 a.m. because this is a residential community. Okay, so once again, we're in the middle of the public comment period. If you do have comments, you're encouraged to send those via email or US mail to Drew York. His address is right here. You can also call me if you would like to just give us a comment, and I will make sure that Drew gets that. And finally, I think we have a 4 more information slide. So here's the GeoTracker website, and that will have all the technical reports on it, including air monitoring results. There's Drew's number. Drew, again, is the case manager. There's my number and email. Best way to get me is always email or text. And then here's property owner information and City of Oakland information as well. And then RIA has a project-specific website that you can refer to find, it's probably a little bit more layman's terms about the environmental remediation. And I believe that concludes our presentation for tonight. So We do not have any attendees, but this will be uploaded to GeoTracker. And I'd like to first give Seth an opportunity to address anybody and then have Dylan give us her final comments. So Seth?
Yeah, not much to add. Thank you, Tracy and Dylan and Drew at Alameda County for working on this case with us. We're excited to get this one finally built. I know for anybody listening that we may have done this a few times, so thank you for bearing with us. And as Tracy said, please just reach out to any of these contacts if you have any further questions or want any further information. Thank you.
Great. And Dylan?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I wish that there had been somebody on this call, but it's good to have on the record. I appreciate Riaz for doing this. Our goal is to inform people. Our goal is to protect the community and let the community know what we're doing. And we have an aggressive schedule, and we're going to start work, provided we can address all the comments. That's why we have this meeting in the middle of the public comment period. So again, there's going to be some short-term impacts, but it's going to be a really good benefit to this little corner of the world by removing these historical impacts, and appreciate that the developer is doing this work and look forward to seeing it being completed.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for joining and wish you a nice evening. Good night.
Good night.